everyone, Joe here from ActionX. Welcome to What's on the Tube Action Action Show, where we talk about everything in the world of television, which normally include episode-by-episode reviews of currently on-airing shows, season-by-season reviews of shows that have currently wrapped up, or currently way too long on the air, or doing these quick impressions, where normally I would watch a show by myself, I finish it, and then I talk about it for like maybe 20 or so minutes. Spoiler-free, so don't worry about it. Just mainly giving you my impressions and, my thoughts in a very simplistic, very much of a bad picture way. The first time I made a sports reference on the show, and I've been doing this for such a damn long time. Today we're talking about Codename Kids Next Door. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you, this has been a show I have been dying to rewatch for many, many years, and I was so happy when HBO Max got the entire Cartoon Network catalog of a lot of old shows from my childhood. I mean, between Disney, on Disney Plus, Nickelodeon, on Paramount Plus, and Cartoon Network now on HBO Max, this is the best time for me to go and rewatch some of the old shows that I used to love as a kid and I haven't watched since I was a kid. And K&D, I've honestly not watched the show in full since it wrapped back in, oh my god, I think I was still in elementary school by the time it was wrapping up. And that was crazy because I think it premiered in 2002 and then in 2008, so it lasted as long as I was in elementary school. Honestly, that show was, now looking into like as of where I am now, it is definitely one of those precursor shows where you can have story in cartoons, where cartoons mainly have been just slapstick mostly every episode, every week. No matter how an episode ends, next week they'll be all right. Don't worry about it. Like, it's not really canon as much. You can go into any episode with just the inclination of, yeah, they're fine. They're just starting up. Whatever problems or any issues they get into, they'll be fine. Everything's going to be all peachy dory. And then, well, no, in K&D's case, that's how it started, because that was just the premise was this very, I'm going to say, battle-filled world where every single generation of a human life is in its own faction, like an RPG. Like, you have the babies, you have kids, you have teenagers, you have adults, you have senior citizens. That was like, oh my god, like, if that was how the world was like, I'm like, I would have loved to join the K&D. I would have really loved it, but that sadly was never meant to happen in my life. So I'm pretty sure there would have been so much legislation bullshit about, well, are kids legally allowed to be in like very high airplane levels of altitude in the air with their tree houses? Like, that is something that if it was to exist in this world would never get approved. It would never happen. Plus some of the technology they do, I'm like, dude, these kids should be hired by their age to join like organizations and governments. They really should, because of just the crazy amount of technology they go into. But when the show first started, it was very much of a simplistic, like, these are kids, like, it's relatable, they're all kids, and every kid wants to be a superhero. They want to be heroes. They want to be these badass fighting machines that know karate, kung fu, has these very rudimentary but very effective weapons. And honestly, like, even going through like back in the first couple seasons, both when I was a kid and now me rewatching the show, there very much was like a divide between what the show began and how it eventually wrapped up. Where when the show began, it was just a traditional kids versus adults. You have our Sector V characters, number 1 through 5, fighting normally, whether that is the delightful children from down the lane, eventually father, then eventually just a slew of adult characters like Sticky Beard, Mr. Boss, freaking I forgot his name because he's just so forgettable. The Toilinator, and I'm like, oh my god, I love this show. Just like every character is so unique, and also like it's just so stupid. Like, kids are fighting adults and they're actually doing damage, where if I was a kid fighting any sort of adult, I would have gotten my ass whooped if they even tried. But in reality, it wouldn't really be effective that much, unless they kicked you in the balls, which thankfully I don't think they ever did on this show, which was pretty respectful. And then as the show progressed, they started to expand the world. At first it was just Sector V, a bunch of random kids, and then, just your adult villain of the week. And then when you kept going, you're like, oh no, they're part of a bigger organization. Like, there's an actual global operation of kids that are somehow have flying vehicles made out of like junk. They have weapons made of a drone. They have a fucking moon base. I apologize for my line. They have a moon base. Like, in our time, we haven't even found a way to colonize the moon yet, and these kids have already found a way to do it. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, for me, like, as the show progressed, like, it just gets crazier and crazier. And then eventually you start getting into the secondary characters, and you meet other sectors and other numbers, and the world just keeps expanding, and eventually then you figure out, oh, teens are an enemy too. And, you know, some of the main characters have relationships with the teen characters, such as number 5 and her sister Kree, and that just builds an extra dynamic layer of like, oh my god, like just the infighting. One of the kids, his father is Mr. Boss, and then just so many connections, and then every character gets their just dues, where initially it was just very simplistic, cartoony, basic, and then you get to season 2, 3, and then like eventually 4, and then you start to really see these kind of like, you know, much more deeper plots, more serialized plots. And I think it's one of those, like, I talked about Nancy Classified a while back, and one of the great things about that show was that it got better over time, where normally nowadays, like, the first or the second season is usually the best one, and then the later seasons suck ass. In this case, it's the same thing. The first seasons were like, they were just setting up the universe, setting up the world, and then once you started to know the rules, once you started to know a lot of the characters and their elements and their backstories, because each one of these characters have like, especially the core 5 operatives, they all have like real storylines. They have real like backstory beyond just being a KND. They have unique traits. They have unique missions that they do by themselves, and you know, you get little peeks of them, and that just makes it even more. It makes the show much more enjoyable, because it can get formulaic at times, but then they start adding new layers. Like, I remember the school bus episode, which was a school train, and I was like, again, there's absolutely no way there would be any sort of legality of like, we're gonna make a school train, a train specifically for school. First of all, that's a cool ass idea. Someone should do that. And second of all, it just made for an interesting episode. And I think of everything, and especially when you get to like the final season, where you start to get movies and you start to get like these big events and like a whole, like a storyline that like branches off to like a new world of possibilities, which I'll talk about towards the end. But I lost my train of thought. I apologize. Because again, I should be aware of this. Like, oh, you should be aware of this. I'm not trying to spoil anything. Like, I'm being very vague and very, like, I'm just telling you the rules of the world and just what the characters are just fighting for. But they started really building backstory. They started really like, there was like eventually like a history origins episode, and then like, and when we got to like the big movie, and we started like really getting details, like, this is the stuff I love, the lore building, and just the possibility they could go, and then just the quality of the writing just improving from there. And again, it's so hard to talk about it without getting into spoilers, but there was a point towards, I want to say, there was one episode I would like to talk about. Man, that there, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Like, if you are watching this because you know, and you just want me to like just get to like the like, I'm just being the vaguest detail in the world. But there was one episode, I think it was the show went on for 5 seasons, 6 seasons, and a couple of movies. Like, there was an episode in season 3 where I was like, I think it was season 3. It scarred me for life. Just, I felt so uncomfortable with that episode, and it wasn't really the biggest deal in the world. And again, like, we're framing it. The show's framing a lot of the stuff like, what do kids like, what do they don't like, and it gets very generic. Like, oh, they don't like broccoli, they don't like vegetables. And there's one episode where they literally made that a whole trope of the episode, and I was like, I felt so scared. I had my own imaginations about that episode, and I was just like, damn, that was really that was great. But there are some really dark episodes, and that's the thing that I love about the like my era of cartoons, is that they were not afraid to get dark at times. There was one episode where it's messed up in a way, because in our society right now, like, adults should not harm children. They really shouldn't. And sadly, there are, like, in our real world, like, there are people who do that, and that's criminal, and those people deserve to die. Or just be sent away forever where they can harm anyone. But there was like a particular villain, an adult, like, he had some major psychological issues, and especially he had a lot of conflict with number one, and I was also, by the way, just letting you know, like when it comes to the numbering system, it's not a number like with an R, it's a number with an H, and I'm like, it works, I guess, for copyright infringement. Like, yeah, he is number one. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, that was kind of weird for me when I was reading it online, like when I finally discovered Wikipedia and all that such. I think what I would mention is that there was a, like when you get to the later seasons, like it gets so much more epically. Even an average episode can get so, the stakes are high. And like, I know it's a cartoon, but like eventually once you get to the second half, like everything matters. Like they reference older episodes, they reference older storylines, and you know, like, so everything's in continuity and everything is canon. There was an episode involving another kid actually being a villain. And I was like, wow, like an actual, like, because normally, like when you're like you're a kid, like you're together, you're united, like you're gonna be pals no matter what. But then when you fight someone that's like actually on your opposite side, it's like, it's kind of scary because that's on your own turf. Like fighting a teenager, fighting an adult, even fighting a baby is like, those are different grounds. But then when you get to actually fighting someone of your own age, it like, it kind of gets a little bit like intimidating at times. And there was one episode where they did like this entire giant winter-esque battle, and it was so cool. Like I felt the tension, I felt the stakes, and I think that's one of like my top 10 episodes of the whole show. And I really wish they would have done more with that, but they sadly they never did with it. But, and even towards the finale, which I'm very bummed, like the finale, like there's the final episode, and then there's the finale where it's the true conclusion of the story. What apparently I found out in my research after the fact is the special never aired after the original broadcast. Like there was like one time on Boomerang when that was still a channel where they aired it again, but they never aired that on TV again. It was just like, you get reruns of the regular show, but that special was like, if you were there, you were there. And I was grateful to be there. KND, I think I jumped on around season 2 around there. So I just watched the earlier episodes when they were on my TV. But then when it came to the new episode, I was always on top of it. And when we finally got to that final moment, like, I made it a clear point in 2008, 2009. Like, I'm going to watch this conclusion no matter what. And I did. And it was heartbreaking. It really was. Because again, like it proves the point when like a cartoon makes you emotional and it makes you care about these characters. Because again, like a cartoon, like they're meant just for slapstick, they're meant just for humor, and you know, when it's done, it's done. You don't really like pay much attention to it. But with this one, like they made a point to have a conclusive ending. Like this ended their chapter of their story, and we can speculate on what happened next because they definitely did follow up on that a little bit, but we were always like in the wonderment, like what did happen, like, and that's one of the great things about any sort of story. Like if you perfectly make an ending where you want to know more, but you're satisfied that that is the end, and if we never get to see more from that world, that is fine. I would be satisfied with that, and we could just move on with life. And honestly, yeah, there were rumblings that we were going to get a sequel series down the line, and you know, there was a campaign, and it never picked it up, and that was really unfortunate. But thankfully we're in the era of like, you know, revivals and, you know, nostalgic reboots or, you know, continuations that I'm very hopeful at some point in the future we will get that at some point. So, you know, maybe things would change, but right now with this story, like it is one of the most, I think, one of the best cartoons I've seen in my childhood, and now rewatching it, it still holds up. It's not perfect. There are moments where like it's not definitely like every season is worth it. Well, especially the earlier season, but you know, those are just like a chore to do to kind of get invested in this world, and then you get to the later stuff, and you're just so impressed of, you know, the amount of TLC that they do. That I don't think they produce a lot of episodes, and again, cartoons are like, well, what do I mean by a lot? Do I mean like over 100, over 200? I say that most of their episodes, they were all very impressive, and they all mattered a lot. And it just made me wonder what else is out there, because every operative, not every operative, every sector, every chain of the command of KND was so well thought out. It was so detailed that I would love to see. Like, we got episodes where we just focus on other operatives, we focus on other characters, because at the end of the day, Codenames Kid Next Door is not just about Sector V. You have tons of operatives out there, so the focus can go anywhere. And they did some pretty interesting stuff with it. And, you know, again, I don't want to spoil much about it because it's just something I would recommend you watch. And even as an adult, like, I think you can still get that appreciation from it. But at the end of the day, it was a show that I loved as a kid. I still love it as an adult. I can't wait to rewatch it again down the line, maybe with my own kid, and just have them see a different, because I have no idea where cartoons are going to be when I have my own kids, but definitely I will show them this show as well as a ton of other shows from my childhood, that because that my generation was in such a special period. It really was. The animation was getting more digital. It was getting more open to do new things, and you were able to like finally start to tell like some real story there and get some real foundation going there. So this show is one of a kind. I really hope at some point that that sequel series does get made. I would love to support it. I will do my best to campaign for it if, you know, that ever comes back up. But at the end of the day, they still made a perfect run. To the creator, Patrick Warner, thank you so much for giving me a piece of my childhood, giving us kids something of an imaginative side of things to like really work upon as we continue on our life, and just hope maybe in another universe there is a KND out there and I was a part of it. I would probably be number 69. Yeah, I just destroyed my entire reputation there. I'm sorry. I mean, there has to be. I gotta look it up now. I'm gonna see if I find there was a number 69 on the show. I will put his image or her image up and let that forever trend. So again, just to come to a close, like for me, I love Candy. I highly recommend you watch it. If you have watched it, let me know in the comments below. What were your memories with it? In a non-spoiler way. But for me, you can go. But if you haven't watched KND yet, you can go watch every episode of Codenames Kid Next Door, including the movie. And also, for some reason, the finale special is not on HBO Max. That really bummed me out. And, you know, hopefully they update that. And a lot of, like, maybe, like, edit to, like, the movie and some of the specials are not on there, which I'm like, are you really serious? Like, you have this entire catalog and you just could not promote it? Like, that's just so weird, but whatever. But yeah, so you can go watch all of them. 99% of all the K&D stuff on HBO Max. So go check it out there. But if you're unaware, this has been What's the Two from Action X, doing my quick impressions on Codename Kids Next Door. If you want to know what we're doing normally on What's the Two beside these quick impressions, normally we're doing episode reviews every week on our current airing show. This is a time capsule episode of sorts, so I have no idea when this is getting uploaded. So we could be still doing Nancy Drew, we could still be doing Walker, we could still be doing Rookie or something else. I don't know 100%, but you can go check them out. We're always uploading episodes weekly on both Action X and the Collection Compass. So go check us out there as well. But again, if you like this quick impression, please like, favorite, share this if you want to see more. You can also subscribe to us on youtube.com/ActionXvideos if you want to see more of us. Please also follow us on social media to stay up to date with any sort of updates for the channel. And please also ring that bell for a notification when our next quick impressions is live, or just a generic episode of What's on the Two. But until then, stay safe out there, be good to each other. And as always, peace out. Okay, I was actually going to stick my nose up my finger like in the show, but I'm like,